Today we're going to colonize the entire world using only the lower 48 of America. Colonize Pls is installed and it's going to be linked in the description, as well as Superstates, the wonderful mod that we used to bring these countries to life. Will the stuffy urban elites of New York bring civilization to the rest of the world? Will Florida man conquer it all? Bath salts in his pipe? Will California make the most beautiful places on earth unlivable hellscapes? Well, lads, let's find out. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like it. And if you want early access to every video that comes out on the channel in the future, check the join button below the video and become one of the homies. Now, obviously, whenever you're considering who's got the best chance, it's going to be the coastal nations and nations like Texas over here with a big border with a lot of colonizable lands. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of colonization in Europe, mostly just because it's like downstream of the trade node. Usually they want to colonize stuff that's upstream. So we should see some stuff in like maybe Asia, but definitely Africa. And definitely South America. Yeah, the guys you would expect to head north are heading north. And of course, New York is in control of New York, as well as Toronto. And Florida man has left Florida, pushing into the Yucatan, about to touch tips with Texas, who's pushing south with everyone else over there. And you love to see it. The natural borders of California have finally been realized. And we have our first casualty here, Oregon getting split in half between California and Idaho, of all people. Idaho, the sleeper pick. Didn't think they'd be doing much, but you got to remember, they do have a border up here. And they've got land to colonize up north. So I'm really happy to see that New Hampshire has gotten Nova Scotia. So, and put Prince Edward's Isle up here. So shout out New Hampshire, looking pretty good so far. Yeah, Texas is definitely trying to manifest a little bit of their own destiny. It doesn't look too good for Oklahoma. And my beloved Tennessee is also getting pulled into that fray. So hopefully they won't take too much of a loss here. I don't think they border anybody, so they shouldn't lose any land. Fingers crossed. And now Florida is large enough to have their own regional name, Floridian Central America, pushing over into Havana. Looks like Florida might be going for a little bit of that circle down here in the south. I wonder if there's a name for that. I think I've got one on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite put it out there. Florida definitely having some issues with rebels in the south, as well as over here in Cuba, while they continue to relentlessly push east, colonizing most of the Antilles, or whatever this region is called over here. Texas has taken Oklahoma, as well as Arkansas, as well as, what is this, Nebraska? I think this is. I don't know, but they took this. Kansas, it's Kansas, my bad. I know the US states, I promise. It really does just blow my mind, just the depth of this mod. The mod actually includes Canada and Mexico. I just didn't include them for this video. But each state has its own strength, weaknesses, paths to follow. And when you think about it, that's kind of why they operate more or less efficiently in the real world. And that's not entirely unlike the factions that you can use to operate more or less efficiently in the sponsor of today's video, Call of Dragons. Whether you recruit elven maidens, mighty orcs, powerful mages, or any of the other countless magical heroes, your possibilities are nearly limitless in Call of Dragons. This game, in a nutshell, is an MMO fantasy conquest game with 4X elements sprinkled throughout. There's a ton of content to enjoy with a ton of replayability while you fight off the darkness that has taken over the land. Think of the bad boys, the behemoths, as Napoleonic France, and the various factions of the world as the European powers forming the various coalitions throughout the campaigns against the French. The interesting twist of this game, in my opinion, is each of the 8 unique behemoths, which are powerful raid bosses that you and your friends can face together. Upon defeat, they actually join you, and you can catch them all and use them to fight your fights in the future. These 10 behemoths may be big scary monsters, but to you and your alliance, they will act as dependable companions that you can rely on while you dominate the battlefields as the Beastmaster in charge of these powerful creatures. As I said, this game is a 4X title complete with large-scale warfare, 3D terrain to consider for battles, behemoths to conquer and utilize for yourself, a massive 4 million square kilometer map, and of course the dragons, the most powerful creatures of all. There's PvE, of course, but for the sweaty competitive boys amongst you, there is PvP as well, where you can team up with your alliance members and show those other scrubs who's boss. Battles can be absolutely massive, with thousands of units and over 40 players in just one engagement. With battles existing in a real-time environment, tactical decisions must be made on the fly for various different types of units, each with their own strengths and drawbacks. The game is cross-platform to mobile and PC, meaning you can play it your way, anytime, anywhere. Get your friends together and establish an alliance that works for you, fighting side by side and designating different members to focus on specific aspects such as training or building infrastructure and other projects that benefit the whole alliance. There's even a built-in language translation system, so you can play with your amigos overseas without worrying about language barriers. And since I'm such a good guy, I got you guys an awesome exclusive deal on some special in-game rewards if you download Call of Dragons today using my download link below, or if you scan the QR code on screen and enter code CODMonster for exclusive in-game rewards today. You gotta support companies that support content you love? Check out Call of Dragons today and start dominating. Something that I didn't know I was going to see today was Greater Ohio being proclaimed, with Ohio losing a couple of provinces here in the north. taking the entirety of West Virginia and Indiana. Well, Indiana owns land in Illinois. I don't really know what that's all about, but that is a thing. Also, Alabama has full annexed Mississippi, and Tennessee has taken over most of Kentucky. So we've definitely got some consolidation, some tag eliminations going on right and left. Turns out that there is actually 2 Californias, and they've been united. Now we have Las Californias. That's the Californias, if you don't know. That's the extent of my Spanish knowledge here. We have our first colonial nation set up here in South America. We've got these guys over here. More on that in a moment. And this is New Hampshire, New Hampshireite Columbia. And these guys over here, Curacao and that, this is Connecticut. This is all Connecticut. Don't you know? It's pretty intuitive, right? It makes sense. Oh no, look what they did to my boy. Tennessee got cut in half by Florida, pushing all the way up past Davidson. Florida is absolutely dominating. They have annexed Georgia as well as South Carolina. That is, that's scary. It's very scary. Could you imagine this many Florida men coming up to your door saying you are now part of the greater Florida Republic? The competition for Northern South America heating up. Floridian Columbia. We've got New Hampshireite Columbia. We have New Yorker Columbia as well as Connecticuter Columbia. And then, of course, more New Hampshire Columbia over here, pushing over into Brazil now. So definitely going to see some interesting vassal play down here in the South because they will set up subject colonial nations. Whoa there, Montana. I'm going to have to ask you to calm down. We all know that Montana doesn't even exist. So how could it control all of this land unless this land up here in Canada is all a psyop as well? Lads, is Canada a psyop? And as Connecticut continues to colonize South America with New Hampshire for the most part, they have pushed over into Africa with Connecticut or Guinea as well as New Hampshire. And then we also have Massachusetts getting in on it. So it's funny, these guys are all New England. So New England is actually like the region that's dominating. I wouldn't say that that was my first thought, but they are doing well. Well, when you consider that most of them have been kicked out of New England by New York. New Hampshire is now based out of Halifax, and they talk like the Trailer Park Boys. Connecticut's doing okay. They annexed Rhode Island, but Massachusetts not doing so well. They got kicked mostly out of Massachusetts. Now they just have I think this is Boston right here, and then Bristol. So not doing too good. Not quite like Greater Ohio, still absolutely steamrolling through the Rust Belt over here. Florida has stabilized and they've handed most of their rebels. These are particularists, so they're not going to lose any land to that. Texas is doing pretty good. They've taken over a ton of land here, pushing well up into the Midwest. And then there's Las Californias, which is green now, has eaten even more nations over here, and they're looking very scary. They're probably going to be the final boss between them, Texas, and Florida. I don't know how Ohio's going to do being split between New York, this massive Montana, and then these two guys over here, but only time's going to tell. And we do have some colonial action going on over in the east. We have the land of anime being colonized by Las Californias, and it looks like the Chinese are going to be speaking like Valley Girls now too. As is basically every island over here, because California's the only one making their way over here. Bro, they're even into India. They're just like leapfrogging all over the place. They're going to get some competition eventually, I'm sure, but until they do, California is going to be absolutely bussin' in terms of economics, considering how much development they're colonizing this way. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that California having a very good game, almost as good as Great Lakes, which has formed by Greater Ohio, apparently pushing New York out of Canada. And now we have this Nunatsiovit or whatever over here in Newfoundland. But yeah, this is looking pretty good. Texas and Florida have just been duking it out. Like every couple of years they go to war. Texas is winning basically all of it. So not really a huge surprise, but Texas is not doing much colonizing. Who is doing a bunch of colonizing is Massachusetts as well as Virgin Islands, apparently. We have Kilwa and Yemen have popped out as rebel nations, as well as the Mamluks. And then Kabu, for some reason, with their capital up here in Iberia, colonizing Iberia as well as, you know, all the centers of trade up here. You know what? I'm not even going to complain. I'm just glad somebody's colonizing Europe. But without a doubt, my favorite thing so far is Pennsylvania. This is Pennsylvania. Lads, their capital is in Vijayanagar. They've been kicked out of America, and now they're India, as well as Persia, for that matter, and the Levant. So Pennsylvania might be the sleeper pick, considering the fact that they have a lot of land over here in the old world, I guess it's called now. And then you just have South Dakota chilling, doing nothing, sitting still, holding still, hopefully not getting conquered. And then you have Illinois, who only owns like 3 provinces in Illinois. The rest is in like Wisconsin, Minnesota, a couple of provinces over in Kentucky and Tennessee, who does still exist. They're just over here in Memphis, which honestly, we don't really have to talk about that. We don't claim Memphis. I tell you what, you can't leave this game run for 15 minutes without some weird, wacky stuff happening, and this time is absolutely no exception. Not only do we have the Papal States here, but we have an independent Ottomans who has broken away from somebody. I don't know who, but yeah, lads, they're a Catholic bishopric. They're a theocracy. They're a subject of the Pope, actually. So this just keeps getting weirder and weirder. And of course, like you literally have to point it out. Kabu is huge and Kabu is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Meanwhile, Pennsylvania continues to grow, pushing into Arabia and all the way over into Ethiopia, looking so good. We have Hawaii has formed somehow, and Hawaiian New Guinea. So even the Hawaiians are doing a bit of colonization themselves. Ironic. The South American nations have broken free because the New Englanders are getting dumpstered, and the big 3 continue to duke it out. Florida mostly getting kicked out of Florida, split between the Great Lakes and Texas. So who will win this top 3? Only time will tell. And with all of these breakaway nations from rebels, Africa looks pretty rough, minus the very massive Massachusetts with their capital down here in the Congo. So that's pretty good. I will say that that is kind of the nice thing to see out of all that, as well as Pennsylvania doing incredibly well, making up the majority of India, Arabia, though it looks like they declined a bit, lost a couple of provinces over here. California did well. They conquered most of the land up here, though that was not anything new. And most of the land over here pushing down into Southeast Asia, I think that is a little newer. But somehow the subject theocracy of the Ottomans annexed the Pope and is now a patriarchate. So safe to say, this is the weirdest thing of this run. When I was planning a Superstates run with Colonize Pls installed, I wasn't thinking we were going to have a Catholic Ottoman theocracy, but we do have that, and I'm happy for it. Well, that is certainly a thing. Texas ended up getting their place in the sun here in the south, as well as in Peru, but they're losing a war to the Great Lakes right now. So Texas probably not the number 1 of these 3. They are the number 2 after Los Californias, but somehow Kabu ends up the number 2 great power, which I'm a big fan of, and Ottomans in 3rd place because, of course, the Ottomans are inevitable. The Great Lakes are the 3rd out of the big 3 in the New World, with the number 5 great power, with 6 going to Pennsylvania, aka India, and then with 860 development, Massachusetts, and then Florida still maintaining great power status down in the 8th spot. Texas with the military hegemon. How very fitting.
Special thanks to ALS Gamer, LeGrand Puba, Gio, Josh Kaczynski, Edge Rhino, Juan Damon, Ian Powell, Cannon Fodder, Corvette Gaming, Anthony Grove, Harry Newhouse, Saranska, Ricardo, Cobalt, Rex, Total Farce for It, Drunk Binary, Nathan Albright, and many more. Thank you. For early access to videos, check out the join button or the link in the description below.